and welcome into the LSR Podcast. I'm Adam Candee, sitting in for Matt Brown. I'm joined, as always, by Dustin Gouker and special guest Brad Allen as we go through the stories of the week in sports betting and beyond. We're going to talk plenty about what's happening state by state throughout the United States, as well as some news from up in Canada. A little bit of thought exercise on what exchanges might mean in the United States, as well as a look, of course, at New York, because what would an episode of the LSR Podcast in 2022 be without a look at New York? But naturally, of course, it is Super Bowl week, and so we have to talk more about what is going on around the big game, the estimates on handle, what markets we think are going to perform, et cetera, et cetera. But I feel like I want to start here, guys, with what everyone came to this podcast for, because now that they know that we have Dustin with his brand new DraftKings platform in Oregon, and we have Brad Allen NFL on the Twitter machine, they came to know your best bets for the Super Bowl here, guys. So go ahead, tell the people, what should they be wagering on here in the Super Bowl?
Orange Gatorade. That's
Orange Gatorade.
The play. Orange Gatorade. That's my biggest bet. Not really.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
I'm on. We're talking
record
about this before. We're talking about this before. I'm on the Bungles 4.5. Brad, I did not hear who you were backing.
Oh, Brad's on the opposite side.
Yeah, some Rams first half. I found a nice bet today, which was quite interesting. It was the score of the winner on the final round at the Waste Management Phoenix Open versus Joe Mixon rushing yards. This is on Caesars William Hill. And I like the final round score because looking last few years, you're looking at a 64 or 65. So it's basically a Joe Mixon under 65 with options for a little bit higher. So I thought that was a nice bet on Hills and Caesars.
See, if you like that kind of creativity, you should go check out our friends over at The Lines and The Lines Podcast, where Brad will give you all of his thoughts in actual detail, as opposed to this little miniature taste of what's going on with the Super Bowl. Guys, of course, you can always find this podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Rate and review so more people can find it. As I mentioned, Twitter, Brad Allen NFL, Dustin Gouker. I'm at Adam Candee. That's 2 E's and no Y. Super Bowl Sunday is upcoming. The AGA has put out its estimates. Gentlemen, we, of course, internally have talked about what we think states will do in terms of how much handle and revenue they'll produce. Dustin, I'll start with you with the fact that the American Gaming Association is talking about more than $7 billion wagered total. Now, that's not all in the legal market, of course, but that is a significant bump from last year.
Yeah, so it includes things like betting offshore, it includes Super Bowl squares, lots of casual types of betting too. So that's their top line number, and it is buoyed, of course, by the fact that there are more legal options here in the United States, soon to be Canada as well. But the big one we'll talk about, obviously, New York legalizing, did not have online betting last year, so that is. Anytime we're just year over year, we just have more states with betting, either retail sportsbooks and or online sports betting, and that's driving some of the more interest in the game and just more dollars wagered in all sorts of forms. So that legal adoption and people talking about it, and we'll talk about the commercials coming, but yeah, we're just going to see more activity on betting on the Super Bowl for sure, even outside of the legal and regulated market.
Of course, it's only natural that we talk about that as awareness of sports betting grows. Brad, there is confusion. It's going to remain for a while as to what is a legal option and what is an unregulated offshore option. But the legal market in the U.S. has a few places, including New York, that we're looking at and saying $150 million of Super Bowl handle, $200 million of Super Bowl handle. Where do you expect the biggest states to be when it comes to this year's Super Bowl?
Well, our man Eric Ramsey, our data analyst, crunching all the numbers, he put a few hours into this. He came up with Nevada leading the way with 175 million wagered this time around, and obviously, there's a lot of tourists there. Then he had New York second with 160 million. And then New Jersey down in third, a precipitous fall for the Garden State with 130 million. I trust Eric, but I wouldn't mind bumping New York up above Nevada. I mean, they seem to be just sort of beating every estimate that we've had to date. So it wouldn't surprise me to see just them go completely nuts and beat Nevada out there.
I mean, Brad, when we look back at just a few weeks ago, you and I predicted what the monthly take would be in New York. I had 900 million. You had 1.1 billion. If we were on The Price is Right, you would win, but that would only be by default. It wouldn't be because you were actually close to the number, and none of us went over. Dustin, the New York market obviously is the talk of the town. $1.6 billion in handle. We'll get a little more in depth on New York here momentarily, but what do you think about New York versus New Jersey? We talked about this on a previous podcast of if you have whales who are in New York who have been betting in New Jersey, you would assume that the major operators would rather have them bet at 13% tax on the Super Bowl than at 51% tax, but they might not want to have to go to New Jersey. They might want the convenience of betting from their own Super Bowl party in New York.
Yeah, I'd be super interested if that conversation is happening. If like, hey, we'll give you bigger limits if you're going over to New Jersey to bet, so we don't have to pay as much taxes. That's an interesting exercise to think about. What if that's happening? Absolutely. I mean, if you're an operator, you want people betting in New Jersey. At those rates, I would get them on a helicopter and say, hey, come bet in New Jersey. So I pay like 4 times less. So that's interesting. I think Nevada is still going to be number one. Like we've seen Nevada remain just bigger bets and more activity. People still go to Nevada just to watch the Super Bowl, right? Go to Vegas to hang out and watch in a sports book or like get bets down and just huge bets. Like we obviously saw Mattress Mac put a huge bet down in Louisiana, but it's Nevada still has this cachet as a destination to go gamble. So even though New York has gone really big in terms of how much is being bet there, I'm still going to say Nevada is the largest for Super Bowl handle. And the interesting part is we actually get this data. For whatever reason, states have determined that they usually give us what is actually bet on the Super Bowl. So we'll have a little bit of insight into this, and we'll be able to tell like what the Super Bowl looks like as a gambling product here, specifically in the U.S.
Gentlemen, I'll put you on the spot here. Over or under $1 billion in total U.S. Super Bowl handle? Brad, you go first.
I am going to go over 1 billion. Just all the in-game stuff. All these operators are pushing same-game parlays and in-play stuff. So I think we get over that 1 billion mark.
The sharps are on the over $1 billion. Yeah, I mean, we've seen just so much growth. We have Arizona added to the mix. We just have more states, more interest. We're going to see, more lead up to the Super Bowl as a betting product here. You're going to see pregame commercials from like DraftKings and FanDuel to like promoting their product, and there's going to be a lot of interest. I think, we're going to see a lot of money wagered, and it's going to be over $1 billion.
I'll take over $1 billion as well, and I'm also going to say New York surpasses Nevada, and there's a reason for that in particular. I'm going to take a very small example and use it as a canary in the coal mine. One of the podcasts that I listened to from Pro Football Focus, one of the hosts had been in Las Vegas during the conference championship games. He was at one very prominent casino. I will not name that casino because they don't deserve to be singled out, because the problems that he experienced at this casino exist in other places in Las Vegas as well. But basically said that where he was at, the entertainment option he was enjoying, he couldn't get bets down. He could not get the available action where he was in the casino. And if that sort of pain point continues, because he didn't want to have to go sign up for an app in a triplicate form the way you have it in Nevada, I think that sort of limitation is going to lead to New York and New Jersey and Illinois next year, once in-person registration is gone for good, being able to claim those top spots fairly easily, even with the folks still traveling to Las Vegas for the Super Bowl as a destination. That's never going away. So Nevada still needs to work on lessening the friction in its process. You can go to LegalSportsReport.com, read a good story by Brad from a couple of weeks ago where he spoke with some folks in Nevada about the need to modernize the process. And obviously you've heard Matt and I bang on that drum pretty hard as well. Speaking of New York, Brad, as I mentioned, our estimates were woefully off. We're looking at potentially $2 billion in handle in the first 30 days. Are you surprised by seeing just how large New York has gone here at the beginning?
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, as you say, we were all wrong about what to expect. I suppose one note of caution would be the amount of ad spend coming in. And the bonusing, sorry. So obviously Caesars were out the gate with, I think, $3,300. Most of the other ones were $1,500. PointsBet jumped in with up to $2,500 as well. And all these bonuses with playthrough requirements, they're all going straight on this like GGR number and this handle number, sorry. So I wonder if it is somewhat inflated just because of these sign-up offers and whether it does taper off a little bit. Because what percentage of New Yorkers at this point like haven't seen a million sports betting ads, right? All they're talking about is how much advertising is going on. So I wonder if this is kind of as big as it gets, and it doesn't quite grow in the same way that we've seen in other states where it wasn't such an immediate explosion.
How dare you, sir, suggesting that folks have maxed out in the market? There's never an end. It's infinite. Haven't you been following this industry for the last few years? It's infinite. What I think, Dustin, is that as you get more of the super casuals going over the next few days, those who are interested in Super Bowl squares as a way to play, those who are interested in more of the pool sorts of things, maybe that's where the growth can be this particular weekend when we talk about the Super Bowl, because obviously, in New York, yes, there are plenty of ways to get traditional bets down, but there are also the ways that people who are maybe not as engaged and just go to a Super Bowl party are used to playing as well.
Yeah, I mean, none of this is over. I mean, yes, there's the thing about this, and that we like to talk about that Arizona launch, even Michigan launch, where we had these coordinated launches of lots of operators. Like, you get this critical mass immediately of tons of people. This is not the experience of like New Jersey or all of that, which has been more incremental growth from a pretty slow start. So it's not over. I mean, there's still. We all know, there's tons of advertising and PR pitches from offshore sportsbook. Tons of people still betting on those things. Like that, you have that in addition to what you said, which is the casual Rex. Like, you have this audience of people for the Super Bowl who probably might be interested in placing a bet, may not place a bet the rest of the year, or may just be interested in some more casual gambling. Right? There's a large audience to still get. It's not. I don't think you like switch on a light and all of a sudden you've acquired all the customers. Now, acquiring more customers will obviously be increasingly hard. Getting people to switch over from offshore, or getting somebody who's not used to betting on sports to that first bet. But there's room to grow. But I think Brad's right though. It's not going to be this meteoric straight line up. It's going to be we started at a really high point obviously, and then there's going to be growth from there.
Guys, we also are in the middle of earnings call season, and Dustin, Penn National had its earnings call recently. We've talked plenty about Penn National and its brand, Barstool Sportsbook, and what we saw on the eve of Penn's earnings call was a second story from Business Insider, which had published some allegations of sexual misconduct against Barstool founder Dave Portnoy. These were a fresh set of allegations that came out in this Business Insider story. Jay Snowden, the CEO of Penn, ended up having to weigh in on this at the beginning of the call, and now we've also seen some legal action from Portnoy himself.
Yeah, again, wild times that the CEO of a large regional national gambling company in the United States has to start an earnings call talking about Dave Portnoy and sexual allegations. You said the second time we've had these stories drop right before earnings call. Super interesting, obviously, there. And he commented on the timing of that vis-a-vis the earnings call. But it kind of hangs out. I mean, none of this is a shock at this point, right? Penn National knew what they were getting with Portnoy and Barstool. They were getting controversy on top of the brand and the customer acquisition and all of that. So, but when you go into the earnings call, this just dropped. They have to talk about this and then try to set it to the side. And it's part of living with Barstool as a brand, right? Because there's controversy follows the company where it goes, and you're paying. Like, some of that is you want that controversy. Probably you want people talking about you, and if that's the case, mission accomplished for Penn National. But there's more to it there. The CEO, you said, Jay Snowden, said that Barstool will be profitable not too distant future, probably next year. From there, what we're seeing on our end, obviously, Barstool is not a top 3 operator. Most places it is a 4 or 5. What is the path to that and growing market share? We'll see there. They're still harping on their low marketing costs. Barstool is the marketing arm, and they just use that to try to acquire customers. And they're retaining customers too, which is we don't always get a ton of insight into that, but they are when they get a customer, they're keeping them in the sports book. So lots of interesting data there, but it is all overshadowed by all of this. So far, Portnoy continues to be able to survive all of this. Whether, I mean, again, it doesn't shock any of us, I know, when we hear these things, but it is kind of weird to see, like, you have to defend it if you're Penn National.
You know, Brad, with Penn National, we saw the stock briefly dip. There wasn't a huge effect ultimately based on what came out during the earnings call from Business Insider. But my question for you goes beyond that, because as Dustin mentioned, it hasn't been a top 4 or 5, hasn't been able to crack beyond the top 4 or 5 has Barstool Sportsbook in its short life. And the product from most folks that we talk to is okay. It's not overwhelming or spectacular. And we talk so much about Portnoy and his effect on everything, but I mean, what do you think overall the effect of the Barstool product will be on its long-term prospects for success? Because it seems like in that area, it is trailing behind some of the bigger operators.
Yeah, I would say the product seems solid. I think Isla's tested it recently for their big product review, and they said, again, solid. But as you say, they seem to come sort of 5th or so in the market. They get sort of 6 to 8% share, and that's kind of where they just flatten out. So I suppose the big thing for their future plans, obviously, they want to migrate onto this technology being built by The Score. I would say there's a lot of risk there. DraftKings, obviously they moved on to their own technology, and that was a journey in itself, but that was proven, established sports betting technology that had been taking bets for a decade or more. What The Score is building and has built recently is brand new. It's taken minimal bets to date. They're still building the trading and risk. That's going to be based in Gibraltar, which obviously a lot of people question that. Why are you building this North American risk team in Gibraltar? So, they were talking in the earnings call, they want to migrate Barstool over onto that in Q3 2023. So look, they're giving themselves a lot of time, but that's going to be a big risk down the road.
Yeah, and as you've written on and as we've seen, platform migration, look no farther than DraftKings and SB Tech, is no small thing, is no small challenge. It is massive in terms of the technology, in terms of the risk and trading to be able to put these things together. So for an operator that is sort of living in the margins right now of the top of U.S. sports betting, it would be a major chance to risk even that level of market share, depending on what it looks like by the time they're ready to make that move. Should be fascinating to keep an eye on that. Brad, you mentioned risk, and I'll use that as a segue to talk about a very interesting story that you put together about a topic that gets a lot of play in discussion, but I don't know how much it actually will ultimately have an effect in the U.S. market, and that is betting exchanges. Obviously more prevalent where you are in the UK. We talked about this a little bit when we were on with Matt Brown not that long ago, but I'm curious what you learned in your reporting and talking to folks about the prospects for betting exchanges in the U.S.
So I was driven to write the article after those Jason Robbins comments last year saying, we don't want bettors trying to win. And a popular rebuttal we got was, well, bring on the exchanges, let everyone have their fun. And I wanted to kind of push back a little bit on that narrative, because you speak to a lot of sharp bettors over here, and exchanges they're 5% of the market in terms of revenue, and nobody really likes them, right? And so I spoke to a few sort of sharp bettors this side of the Atlantic. Why don't you like them? And there was 2 main things that stood out. One was basically it makes all these smaller markets much sharper, right? So if we're thinking about the US, we might be talking about NFL player props, markets where bettors can have an edge at the minute because they're relatively low limit, or college basketball totals, something like that. As soon as these are relatively liquid on the exchange, the edge disappears, right? They become so much sharper. You're betting directly against the sharpest syndicates in the world. The people beating up Chris or Pinnacle at the minute, they're going to be setting their own prices, and you're going to be betting against them, and you're going to lose. And that's the problem, basically. So I try to have a more positive bent. So, what's the optimistic angle here? Why might the US be different? And that was the thought that, well, they're making products directly for the US market. They're going to be new. They're going to be more user friendly maybe than Betfair. Sort of built like Robinhood. To sort of the way that made trading easy. We're going to make trading sports easy. We're going to make it really user friendly and colours and lights, and it's going to be fun. But I've had some pushback, or again saying I was just too friendly to exchanges. And there's two key responses quickly I thought was quite interesting. One from on LinkedIn, basically saying one of the reasons Betfair was so big, maybe early 2000s, that decade there, is they were getting a lot of liquidity from dodgy markets that maybe they shouldn't have been, and they're probably not anymore. Like Asia for football, India for cricket, huge liquidity out there. The US exchanges aren't going to be getting them. And then the second thing, this is from a golf trader at Bet365. I find it strange the article gravitates to the belief US punters are shrewder than their European counterparts. From 30 years in the industry, I haven't seen anything to support that. With more US-based traffic coming to European bookies, I see an insatiable appetite for parlays and particularly exotics. So I think that just speaks to the idea. I know, Dustin, you've talked about this before. Gambling Twitter is very, very vocal about, we want to win, we want to bet, limits are a joke, blah, blah, blah. But just the vast majority of bettors, they want to stick a stupid parlay on the NFL, and that's it. They just want to have they just want to have some fun, basically. And therefore, exchanges, they probably won't ever get much above the sort of 5 single-digit % we see here.
Yeah, and that's not even to say like some of the legal issues, like how does the exchange work across state markets here? Can you do that? Can you get to that critical mass where you actually have something? There are a lot of problems with the potential of markets here, but yeah, and I'm one of those guys. I mean, I follow sports. I just want to get some bets down, right? I don't have endless amounts of time like you guys who are sharp bettors to do the research. Nor I just want to have some fun and lose some. I'll probably lose some money over the long term, even though I'm still crushing Oregon DraftKings right now.
Humble brag.
I've cooled off, but I'm still up. But that is like not like just people just don't want to be sharp bettors. That is not 90. I don't know what the percentage is, 95, 99. Most people just want to bet. They want a chance on a big return rather than getting your edges on minus 110 markets. They want to put a parlay down and hit big. As much as we caution like the promotion of all of these things, that's what people really want. They want a lottery ticket sometimes, right? Or just a chance to make, put $5 down and win a lot of money. Like that is the average bettor, I think, in the United States. I agree with you that there's nothing special about U.S. bettor who wants to be sharp. They just want to get action down and have fun, right? For the most part.
And Dustin, to follow up on that was something that we don't talk about as much. We talk about the liquidity, we talk about the practicality. What we don't talk about is that a lot of what U.S. sports betting has been sold on to the public is that you're playing against the house, right? You know who you're going against every time. And if we go back to the DFS days, I mean, what ultimately got revealed and ended up driving a lot of people away was that you figured out that who you were playing against was a sharp with a script who had, 10,000 entries, and you had no chance of winning. And so when we get to that point in the U.S. market, granted, an exchange isn't exactly the same as that, but if people start getting to the point where they feel like they can't win at all, why would they want to take part in it?
Yeah, absolutely. And DFS, that's a great example going back to DFS. Heck, I have one of my cousins was like a great, really went to school and like studied MLB analytics, thought he would have an edge in DFS. And even he became quickly cognizant of how hard it is. And yeah, same thing applies to betting, that you might get through here or there and maybe you're really good. You can scrape by on the margins, but yeah, nobody wants to do that. No, that's not whether you endeavor to be sharp or not, even you just you have this allure of maybe I can win, and yeah, if you can't, then you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose customers for sure.
Well, we're talking a lot about the U.S. market, of course. We spend a lot of time looking at Canada as well. The folks up north, especially in Ontario, they will have legal sports betting, Dustin, as soon as April, and we saw a few of them take steps forward this week.
Yeah, we're just under 2 months from a launch in theory. April 4th is when the go live for Ontario is for both online casino and sports betting. We have 3 operators who have gotten started down this path that have some regulatory approval. Not every single thing is every T is crossed or I is dotted yet, but we have The Score, which we were talking about earlier, a Canadian company, Canadian brand bought by Penn National. We have PointsBet, which has really focused on Canada and has a whole arm up in Canada focusing on the opportunity there. And Rivalry, which has been mostly focused on the esports opportunity. These are the only 3 we have so far that are actually got this preliminary approval in Ontario. So you'll see those likely very early on. We're still waiting for lots of brands, both European and US, to get in the door. Of course, that's in addition to Proline Plus, which is up in Ontario as the lottery product. But yeah, there's lots going on there. We also even saw Entain, the European company that does the JV with BetMGM here, bought Sports Interaction, which is interesting because it's a gray market operator, and not 100% clear what's going on there, but it's interesting timing that is great. Sports Interaction, very well known, I'd say, brand in Canada because it's been serving the country for a while, and Entain looks like it might be working on a gray market that's outside of Ontario while also focusing on the opportunity in Ontario. So lots of interesting stuff going on in Canada. We're going to keep our eyes on that, but we are just about 2 months from a launch there.
Brad, I'm curious your thoughts when we talk about operators like theScore and PointsBet, because theScore has sort of branded itself as We Are Canada. PointsBet has sort of branded itself as We Know Canada. And I'm curious if you think these sort of ethnocentric approaches to saying, well, we know the market better, we can cater to the market better, have a chance at breaking through against the more well-funded operators.
Possibly in the long run. I mean, I did a little bit of asking around Ontario this week. What do we expect this market to look like when it opens up? Is it going to be FanDuel, DraftKings? Is it going to be those Canadian-focused operators? And the sort of vibe I got, the response I got was probably the offshore books they're gonna come in and do well best. The likes of Bet365, maybe Betway, who've got the biggest databases, and they're going to be able to just get those guys playing much more quickly. Especially with the fact, I believe you can't advertise bonuses directly. Like once you've got people onto your site, then you can say, here's a bonus, but you can't splash out a TV ad going, come and get $100 free. So again, it might be just a little bit harder to attract customers unless you already have them in your database, like Bet365.
Guys, obviously all of this content can be found at LegalSportsReport.com, on our Twitter at LSP Report. We have some state updates there as well. I'll hit on a few of the highlights of what's gone on around the country. Louisiana, of course, just had its launch during Conference Championship weekend, and at least by geolocation per capita, had a heck of a start. In fact, more of the adult population than in New York had at least a geolocation ping registered when it comes to online sports betting. That's according to information from GeoComply. We are waiting on numbers in Louisiana. We hear there might be another operator launching in the next couple of days. We'll have that information up on the Legal Sports Report website when that happens. In Arizona, which we've discussed, a representative who has a large portion of tribal population within her constituency has introduced a bill that would potentially expand tribal licenses from 10 to all 22. What we know about Arizona was that it was a competitive bidding process in which 10 licenses were allocated for professional sports franchises and 10 licenses were advocated for tribes. That did leave out a few tribes, and there is still some lawsuit action working its way through the courts with the Yavapai tribe and the state. That is likely to come to a settlement, but we could see to where that doesn't really matter so much anymore. You could potentially have more licenses open up. We'll wait to see what happens with that. Still a long way to go in the legislature. But in South Dakota, one major hurdle has been cleared to mobile sports betting by an 18-17 vote. A measure to put the question of mobile sports betting to the public on the ballot passed the Senate. That is step one. Still has to also pass the House. Does not have to be approved by the governor, but would then go to the ballot. Keep in mind, South Dakota only legalized sports betting in the past few months, is already looking at the paltry haul that has come in from only having in-person betting in Deadwood, and decided that it's time to expand that betting beyond just that one town. Roughly 600,000 population in South Dakota. Guys, I will potentially say that they have something that others might not. Can you imagine Mount Rushmore Sportsbook? I think that we could even play little free-to-play games, lighting up the president's faces, and can you get it to stop on the right one? Smash the button and win tickets like you do in an arcade. I think that'd be a great customer acquisition.
There's this great interesting thing that was going around some of our Slack about what's the coolest place or what weirdest places you can bet. You go bet in the Baseball Hall of Fame in old Cooperstown. Sign me up for Mount Rushmore Sportsbook.
Oh, I love it. Wait a minute, Brad. Pete Rose is vindicated, isn't he? You can bet in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He can bet in the Hall of Fame.
I think you're wasted in journalism, Adam. Sounds like you've got some ideas that operators want.
I'm not the first time I've been accused of being wasted. So, yeah, we can leave it right there, guys. Of course, like I mentioned, everything that we do, check out that at LSR, and we will be back next week, hopefully with information on just how much was wagered on the Super Bowl. Matt will join us again as well. For Dustin, for Brad, I'm Adam. See you next week.